All right, we're just going to do a microphone like the old days when I sang rock and roll. Okay, you ready? Hey, baby, want to find your tribe?
Watch him as he goes. There goes my hero. He's ordinary.
Okay, so the title of my talk is the 15-minute homestead. How many of you are homesteaders? Raise your hand. How many of you want to be homesteaders? Okay.
Define a homesteader.
That's a great question. What is a homesteader? What comes to mind when we think of the word homestead? Chickens always come to mind first. Can you have chickens in the city? Some cities.
How long is it not a rooster?
It depends on what you do with that rooster. I have a friend who keeps chickens in a suburban home, and he's not allowed to have chickens. You know how he does it? He has a beautiful chicken run that goes around the outside of his house that you can't really see from the street. He keeps female chickens, and anybody in the neighborhood who wants eggs can go collect them because he doesn't actually eat chicken eggs. So that's like his offering to the neighborhood, so all the other weird stuff he does on his 1/10 of an acre suburban lot doesn't get reported to the Department of Making You Sad. And they have one rule in their household because he has many hobbies: raising exotic frogs, raising exotic birds, setting up permaculture-based systems where they all feed each other. Their waste gets processed by, what are those little flies? I can't remember what they're called right now. Black soldier flies, which then the larvae develop and climb up ramps and fall into his ponds and feed his fish. Like it's brilliant what he's put together on a 1/10 of an acre suburban lot. The rule is this: every hobby he has to pay for itself or make a profit. So what he's done is he's taken a home that he used to pay for when he was, when he goes to work, because he works full time, most of the time not home. He's taken that thing where his money went to pay for it, and now he has a home that works for him. Is that a homestead? So a lot of people, when they think homestead, they're thinking 16, 20, 30 acres. They're thinking 5 acres. You can bring the homestead mindset into everything you do. And one of the concepts I think it starts with is frugality. And when you hear the word frugality, what do you think? Is Tag out here?
He's somewhere.
Tag, is frugal a good word? I thought you might not like it because you're a money guy. You only have money if you're frugal. Frugality is something that can be a double-edged sword, right? If you spend 7 days saving 45 cents on your phone bill, is that a good use of time? No, I got to thinking about this when I ended up where most homesteaders end, and that is completely overwhelmed by the workload I had built for myself by overcommitting and having too many new things at one time in the year. Has anybody here ever done that? Yeah, that's the homestead spirit right there. I got to thinking about frugality of time being much more important than frugality of money. Like, sure, I can repurpose that big pile of pallets into fencing, into outhouses, into shelter for my animals. And in order to do that, most of the time I have to take this tool that's made to pull pallets apart and pull them apart and get all the nails out of my way and then repurpose it. And that wood makes some really beautiful stuff, doesn't it? Also, that took me a month. It took me a month. I have an aquaponics system where it has 3 beds, and one of the beds is beautiful pallet wood, and the other 2 beds are like wood from the store. Because I got to thinking about frugality of time. So this means approaching your homestead from a different mindset, right? Where it used to be, the spirit was like, everything we can find free we'll do, and we'll watch all these videos on YouTube about how to most cheaply raise my chickens or my pigs or my cows or whatever. And then you realize in order to do that, I have to run around getting all of these free things. And what I could have been doing with that time is roasting delicious coffee, actually creating content for the YouTube channel, finding ways to gather people like us here so we can share ideas, we can come up with ways to work together, we can develop those in-person relationships. What's more important? Feeding my chickens for free, or being here today in front of you and then out among you right after this so that we can talk about new ideas, so that I know you have my back if I see you at the next Rogue Food Conference, right? Which one's more important? Making connections. Having that time. Time is something that we never get back. So I wore this shirt today. See it? We call it prepping. You know what it says on the back? Grandma calls it Tuesday. The 15-minute homestead idea is not a new one. It's how we used to organize our households. Because if you think about it, how long does it take to cook dinner? It depends on what you're cooking. How much time do you put aside? I heard somebody say about an hour. It can take about an hour. What if your day's really, really flippin' busy? I heard somebody say crock pot. Dinner takes Instapot. Dinner can take 15 minutes to cook. It can take 5 minutes to cook, depending on what you're doing. One pot meal can take 5 minutes to cook if you think about it early enough in the day to use the crock pot. Because putting the ingredients in the crock pot doesn't take that much time. It can also take 15 minutes to cook over that hour you've allocated with spaces in between, because you start out like a typical meal I'll cook is going to be steak, salad, and sauteed vegetables. That takes 15 minutes to cook. I start by taking the steak and vacuum sealing it and putting it in a sous vide at 132. So I have the only way a steak should be cooked, which is rare or medium rare steak. Anybody else can just leave right now. So that just goes. That process takes less than 90 seconds for me to do. I like throw an herb blend on it I already have made, throw it in the bag, throw it in the thing, walk out of the room, and it goes for 2 hours. And it can go for 3 or 4 hours. It does not matter. It's why I like that tool. Then the saute. You got to cut up the onions and start cooking them and cut up the vegetables and put them in there. And then that takes about 10 minutes total to cook on the stove, right? A good saute doesn't take that much time. Well, if you're going to add a salad to that, while it's cooking, you make the salad. So now what we're talking about is we started the steak 2 hours ago, and there was this gap. Then we cut the vegetables while listening to a really good podcast, because that's what you do when you cut up vegetables, and started cooking those. And while those were cooking, did the salad. And then at the end of it, you're like, what happened with the steaks, Nicole? My pan was already hot from the saute, so I take the steak and I sear it, and we serve it, and it's done. When I realized that, I thought, well, what do I do with the space in between started the steak and actually started cooking, which was at the end of the process? A lot of times what people in our culture will do there, watch TV, sort of relax for the day, sit and have a cocktail, none of which is wrong. But I realized from the homestead standpoint, what I do is I use that time between the time to go do a series of 5-minute projects that are keeping everything going. So it could be collect the eggs. It could be make sure all the animals have food and water. It could be go walk through the garden and see if there's any problems, or harvest some harvest while I'm waiting. What's more important on the homestead is not when you do things so much as what you do with that time in between. And sometimes, I'm just going to give you permission to do this. It's totally cool to sit with that cocktail, look at your beauty that you have created, and just enjoy it. Because if all we do is work, work, work on our homesteads and don't take time to appreciate that we have this link with nature and this link with our animals and this link to the world, then we're missing the most important part of homesteading. It isn't so much about getting that home-raised steak, although that's a big joy. But the joy of just seeing everybody, like watching my ducks gossip as they gaggle across the yard because somebody did something that they weren't expecting, and that always causes ducks to go blah, 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 and like waddle around. That's the true joy. That's the true joy. And it's also hilarious. I think we forget sometimes to do that. So, frugality of time, there are some things you can do on the homestead that really help. And the first one is automate. We have somebody here, I think, who does some homestead automation. Are you in the audience? I saw the radio guy had something about automation there. One of the things that has helped me the most with time on the homestead and the ability to leave the homestead, besides having a redneck on site at all times, which is super helpful, is the simple addition of a solar-operated door in my chicken coop. Sun comes up, door goes up. I can set it to open an hour or two after sun comes up, depending on when the predators are. Sun goes down, guess what happens? Door goes down. Chickens are awesome little critters who just want to go in the coop at night. And where I live, if chickens don't go in the coop at night, chickens become coyote food. So they need to go in a coop at night, even though I free range them. So that one little thing means I don't get up, go out, let the chickens out, come back in, all day happens, go back out, close the chickens in. And that may not seem like a lot because that's probably about 5 or 10 minutes of my time. But just knowing I can go out to dinner with a friend sometimes and the sun can set and I'm like, oh no, there's nobody to put the chickens away and now a fox is going to get them or a coyote's going to have a snack. That one little thing is huge. So there's small ways you can automate. Other automations that I think are super helpful on the homestead and very accessible at this point is water automation. So setting up a system that will refill. You can just buy kits online at this point. You can buy kits all over the place, or you can set up your own. One that we do that's not automation but saves us a ton of time because chickens are jerks and they will sit on those chicken nipples and then that will drain all the water out. Have you ever had that happen, anybody? They break them? Yeah. So what we did is we took a 5-gallon bucket for the size of flock I have, drilled a hole in the top, put the lid on, and we took cement trays and we fill the tray and then we fill the bucket and then we turn the bucket upside down and that gives us about 10 gallons of water at a time. Big game changer. Not changing waters twice a day is a big game changer. Like managing your water is great. For the rabbits, we have a drip system. We have a little pump in there that circulates the water. If it gets cold, it doesn't freeze. We have a little bit of heat tape because I'm in Tennessee and it doesn't freeze as much there. On the actual tube where the water comes out, that's enough to keep it from freezing so we don't have to worry about it. All I have to worry about is the main thing full. You know, once a day I'll check it just to be sure. Staging. I have sheep, I have goats, I have chickens, I have ducks, and I have rabbits. So I don't have cattle. That's a whole different world. Yum, I buy cattle from other people. That can be a lot, right? How long do you suppose it takes me to do chores in the morning to when I get up? 15 minutes. Frugality of time. She just did this. I want to reenact what I just saw. That's literally what just happened there. Sometimes it takes time to get this set up. We have our animals organized so that the food and water for each kind of animal where they are located is right there. So I don't keep all my feed in one place and then bring it to the animals. We pre-bring it to the animals so that we can get up in the morning and start at the top of the hill with the goats, work our way downhill, and if we all do it in order, we can check food and water for everybody, let anybody out who needs to be let out, because I have not automated the circulating of the sheep, for example, and be done in 15 minutes. Does that mean 15 minutes every day only? No. On the day we refill the feed, which is about once a week, it takes about half an hour to go around and fill all the containers we have with food. But that change from when I used to have all the food in one place and bring it individually saved about an hour and a half of time. And it required investing a little bit of money in storage that's weatherproof, putting it where it needs to go, weather and pest proof. You have to be pest proof too, because they will try. They will try. And then at nighttime, it's also 15 minutes. Can I spend longer? Sure. Sometimes you go to the sheep. What we have to do with our sheep, because they just live outside with guardian dogs, is make sure they have water, and the food is the grass, and we grow grass in Tennessee, unlike you guys in Texas. So, yeah, you want to just slap me now? Yeah, I thought so. Just make sure they're okay, look and see if there's any problems. But where my morning routine will get hung up, if I'm doing it, is I come out. If it's like this, and we're on this beautiful hillside with these critters that like me scratching them, it's very possible that it might take an extra 30 minutes. Because I might just sit there and enjoy it and pet them. But it doesn't have to. If it's a day where we're in a hurry, we just one at a time get it done. So that's staging. And that can go for your vegetable gardens too. So automating your watering in your vegetable garden. Who does that already? Who hears that and goes, man, that sounds hard? Raise your hand. Okay. I used to be in your camp until this year, and it was because for me, automating watering involves digging holes, putting things underground to drip irrigate, putting that on a timer, and then doing it in such a way that I don't come out and the hose connection has exploded and my entire well has dumped out on the surface. Is that about right? Is that about right? Yeah. What I learned is you could just use a hose with a splitter and another hose and have two sprinklers that waste water by broadcasting it through the air, and put those on a timer, and you're done. And then you time it to happen after dark, so it's not spraying water through the air when the sun's shining on it, and you don't have as much evaporation. That is your base level, entry level automation. The actual device that we use to control the automation has 2 zones, and we can set it up days of the week for 15 minutes, half an hour, 45 minutes, whatever. Whichever days of the week we want. It's battery operated, hooks onto the hose spigot, has 2 outputs for the hoses. And the only issue you might have with this if you're on city water instead of well water is that your pressure you might need a pressure reducer to make sure you're not stressing that device. It costs $75. I buy high quality hoses. I've never had an issue with one blowing off, but I do take a glance at it. It's right by the goats. So start with the goats in the morning, make sure we don't have a big problem there, and then go on with my life. Would I like to have the buried drip system with zones that I talked about that seem too hard? Absolutely. Wouldn't everybody like that? Wouldn't everybody like that? But the other thing is, when you're staging and when you're setting up your homestead, the bare minimum, what can I do that makes it make my life easier, is a great place to start. And it's even better if it's what can I do with what I already have. Because then you get your proof of concept. And your proof of concept leads to, this is what I'm really going to do later. Okay, timing. Timing is everything. I use a planning method I call my 3 things. And it starts with setting your life vision, how you want your life to be, not where you're going. Okay, so how you want your life to be might be that you have enough time to take time off and go camping for a week with your friends here in Kansas. And not everybody has that. So what do you have to do to change your life to have that time? It could also mean that you want to live where you're producing most of your food and able to become a center where people can share best practices with each other about building freedom into their lives and developing community, which is my life vision at the Holler Homestead. From there, you say, what things are most important for me to achieve in the next 2 years for this to happen? And you choose 3 of those things. Can you choose 2? Yeah. Can you choose 4, Tim? No. Why? Because it forces trade-offs. It forces you to think, what are the most important things? In my life, those most important things were financial sustainability, developing community, and taking care of my personal health and recreation. Because I tend towards workaholism. And if I don't have that third one as a goal, I forget and I'll just work all the time. It's a very personal thing. Well, from there, I break it down to today when I'm doing work. I have a whole list. Who has more than 3 things on their to-do list on any given day? I saw a hand go up before I was finished asking that question. Yeah. Who has more on their to-do list for any given day than they can possibly get done? All the hands just went up. The purpose of my 3 things, who feels bad about it? Overwhelmed? Anybody feel overwhelmed about that? Yeah. The purpose of my 3 things, it was my way of tricking myself into not feeling bad about it, but still moving things forward in a reasonable way. And I look at the list, and I choose 3 things from that list that absolutely do or die will get done. Can I choose 1 item?
Yes.
I can have just 1 3 thing. A 1 3 thing would be to come here and do well today for me today. That's my 1 3 thing today. It's all that matters. Why can't I have 4, Tim?
It divides your interests and you get nothing done.
It's about the brain. We remember things in series of 3 really well. You can do 4, and when you get into 5, it takes effort. So I want to tap into the way the human mind works, right? Every time you see somebody get up and say, I'm going to teach you today, they say, we're going to learn these 3 things. There's a reason we do that. It's because 4 is too many. 4 is just like keeping me alive. That's my 4th thing. So with my 3 things, I look at it, and when I choose them, if every single one of those things, based on my 3 goals, is about making money, or it's about building community, or it's about my own personal well-being, and that happens day after day after day, I make myself choose 3 different things. I try to get 1 from each category of goal. Does that make sense to everybody? And what I've done is I've drawn a little heart for me, and I've drawn a little $sign for actually having income, and I've drawn a little network drawing for community development. And I'll write that icon for myself next to it. How does this break into timing? Well, if on that list is walk the dog's heart, send my Hollow Roast Coffee email, money, get Self-Reliance Festival marketing done, community. I look at it, and I look at the time in the day, and I decide which one goes where. And I will always start with the walk, because the walk is the most important part of the day. That's when you have your best ideas, when you're not on your phone, not in front of the computer, nobody's talking to you. It's a great time of day. And then I will do this. I'm pretty sure we're going to eat dinner tonight. Everybody usually eat dinner at night here? At my house, if by 3 p.m. we have not thought about dinner, we have a problem, because we do not have takeout we can order. We do not, we could drive half an hour to the city and then wait, and then, it's just not feasible. By 3 o'clock, if you haven't decided what you're eating hot dogs or hamburgers or some other garbage that you've put in your, I mean, I'm sorry, I just called it garbage, but I'm not sorry. You're eating something quick. But if by 3 o'clock you know what you're doing, the things are out of the freezer, and they are defrosted, then you're good to go. Now, what if you work? What if you're not home at 3 o'clock? What do you do then? Before you leave, yeah. It took me so many years to figure out that you do not cook dinner at night. You cook it first thing in the morning, even though you physically cook it later. But if you have not thought about it in advance, you ruin the rest of your timing. So timing is really important, and the time of day you do things is really important. That's a life skill, not just a homesteading skill. When I'm going to go out and work on a project that requires being outside for 4 or 5 hours, because that happens on the homestead too. Even the 15-minute homestead has days like that. And I look at the forecast, and it's going to be 95 degrees and 92% humidity, which is typical in Tennessee. What time of day am I doing that? 3 in the morning, yeah. It's actually better between the hours of like 4 and 9, but as early as possible than it is after the sun sets later in the day, because you got all that buildup of heat at night. Likewise, same project, January. It's going to be 13 degrees today and sunny. What time am I doing that 4-hour project? Noon and 4. Timing makes all the difference in your happiness and your success on the homestead, and it changes. The weather is so important. Tools. Here's some of my favorite 15-minute homesteading tools. The electric pressure canner. How many of you can a bunch of food? Just a few of you. How many think that canning a bunch of your food seems intimidating? Is it the time commitment, or are you afraid there's going to be a bomb in your kitchen? I just want to know. Both. It's the bomb and the time. Okay. The bomb's a big thing. I'm making sure I don't go over time, because I do sometimes. The electric pressure canner takes the time issue out, because all you got to do is pack your jars, put them in, and hit go. And then there's the one I have, there's a second step where I have to hit double go. So packing the jars will take anywhere from 5 minutes to 25 minutes, depending on what you're doing. The thing that takes the most time for me is green beans and snapping them. The snapping of the green beans takes time, and I'm getting a nod back there. It's a great thing to do if you're going to catch up on an educational video. Am I right? Yep. Or you're just going to wash some trash because it's entertaining. That's fine too. We all do it. So you get it in there, and that thing just cans it for you. It takes all the mystery out. If something goes wrong, it gives you an error code. So you're probably not going to kill somebody with botulism if you have an electric canner. Now let's talk about the explosion thing. Does anybody here know somebody who's actually had a canner explode in their kitchen? How old was that canner? Her mom when she was a kid. That canner was older. It was older. Yeah, you? Who was it? Huh? How old was the canner? Don't know. Here's how canners are built now. Pressure canners are built with a lid. And it has the little dial thing. We've all seen them, right? It has a gasket, or some of them don't have to have gaskets. And it has this other little plug on it that's like a rubber plug, that if the pressure goes over a certain amount, you know what happens? The plug blows. I think it would be a really fun experiment to do here sometime is get a canner, like a Presto, because Presto's cheap, and put it out in the middle with a camera on it and run it till it blows up, because it won't blow up. But the older canners without that safety could blow up. In order for the Boston bomber to make a canner into a bomb, he had to override the safety feature that keeps your canner from blowing up. So if your canner is one you inherited from your grandmother, that's more of a risk than if you've gotten something in the last 20 years. And they've had the safeties on them since the 70s and 80s, I think is when they started doing that extra little blow plug. Also, as a prepper, you should have 2 of those plugs in case you ever do that. I've been canning for 16 years, and I have never blown a pressure canner because I was there and could turn the heat off if it looked like it was getting too hot. Have you ever blown one? Nope. Nope. I've had to replace gaskets, but I've had to replace the dial gauge, but I've never had that plug go. So tools are important. Another tool that you heard me talk about is a sous vide. Does everybody know what a sous vide is? So you vacuum seal your food, or you can put it, if you don't like that, you can buy silicone, because it's in plastic. You can buy silicone pouches. And you submerge the food in water in the bag, so the water is not touching the food. And this is really good for cooking roasts and steaks and meats. You can do hard-boiled eggs in there, soft-boiled eggs, all sorts of stuff. You put the sous vide in the water too, and it's like a stick, and it has a little circulating fan pump thing in there. It's a blade that twists, and it heats the water to a precise temperature. This is how they make your steaks happen at restaurants. You can choose the temperature. I did pork chops at 145 for 4 hours the other day, just in there. And then you take it out and it looks like it didn't cook. And you go, yuck. And then you sear it on your pan and it gets like that crusty brown that makes it look good to us to eat. What that allows you to do is perfectly cook your food without a precise amount of time. So if you're having one of those busy, like between now and Self-Reliance Festival, I'm managing this festival next week that's going to have 500 to 1,000 people, probably closer to 500. And as you can imagine, that has a few details that you need to keep up with and emails to answer. So my head is not in the perfectly cooked steak on the griddle outside game. What's going to happen is I'm going to put that steak on, somebody's going to call, I'm going to answer the phone, and I'm going to burn the steak. We don't like burnt steak at my house. I've already established this. So I'll throw it in the sous vide, and when all the glut is done for the day, I can pull it out of that bag and sear it off. And that takes 2 minutes, and it's a beautifully cooked steak, which is a beautiful reward at the end of the day, right? When you've worked really hard to have a beautiful grass-fed steak from your homestead or from your friend's homestead, which is where I get mine. And you didn't do what most of us do when we get busy, and that's dive into a bunch of junk food that's not real good for us. So I think that's a great time-saving device. What other tools can you think of that fit a homestead that make a huge difference? I think of the battery-operated DeWalt weed whacker with the blades instead of the strings. That thing, here's why. I'm not very good at maintaining the small gas engines, cleaning that little carburetor all the time. It's not my strong suit. That battery thing starts every time I hit the thing, and I'm not there going, nope, none of that. That's one I like. What other tools can you think of? Yeah, no-kill garden. Security systems. And then the biggest thing, and this is how I managed to make the staging of the animals work for me, is taking a permaculture approach to the design, whether you are doing a small city lot or a larger farm. In permaculture, we have the zones. So the idea being your house is zone 0. You're there all the time inside your house, right? So the things you most interact with are there. And then just outside your house, where you go every day, we call that zone 1. So the things like your kitchen garden, you would want to have kind of close to your house, even if the ideal sunspot is a mile that way on your property. Why? Because are you going to go a mile that way every single day? Maybe I know somebody who has a garden at the property next door and they have to do it. You know what happens to their garden? It gets full of weeds. Even if they use the deep mulch, all of it, they still get weeds because there's still maintenance you need to do. And then zone 2 are places you go less often. So if you start taking that approach, 2 things you can do. 1, you can set your animals up. So that's, where you walk every day to maintain your animals, and put things near the path, which will adjust your zone 1 and 2. But taking that zone-based approach to designing your homestead makes your whole life easier, and it allows you to have the 15-minute homestead. which for me, running 3 businesses has been a huge help to actually getting the things done. Again, having the redneck, super helpful, but he was not always there. The second part of permaculture that I find very helpful is the concept of function stacking. So function stacking basically means something that serves a single purpose, you can set it up so it serves more than one purpose. An example of this would be my chickens. My chickens produce eggs that I don't eat unless I have to because I have ducks, and duck eggs are superior to chicken eggs. But people like to buy chicken eggs, and so that's a way for me to offset the external inputs I'm bringing into my homestead by selling their eggs, using the money to buy feed. But remember how I talked about feeding your chickens for free? I don't feed my chickens entirely for free, but I heard dinner scraps. Every scrap that comes out of my kitchen goes into a mulch pit in the chicken yard, and they pull through that, eat what they want, and they make me soil that I can use in my kitchen garden. So I'm getting mulch from them. That's one thing. I'm getting eggs I can sell, and they are performing the job of being my garbage disposal because I don't have pigs anymore, and the pigs used to do that for me, but now the chickens do. And I let them eat anything. I let them go after bones, and then they don't eat the bones, but the bones end up mulching over time. They decompose in my compost system. It takes time. The other thing they do is they eat bugs. And I heard you guys had a lot of ticks here last time. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah.
We don't have a tick problem at my house. I've been free-ranging chickens and ducks on my property for 16 years. The minute you get off of my main area and off into the woods, that's where they are. But they perform pest control too. So that's what I mean when I say function stacking, is starting to think like the sheep provide meat for us. They're meat sheep. They are not wool sheep, so we are not shearing them for wool. But they do something else super important to me that makes my life a lot easier.
Mow the yard.
They mow the yard. So if the sheep don't mow the yard, guess who has to mow the yard? Me. And by me, I mean Tactical Redneck, who is a person who lives on my property, in case you don't know. Somebody got it in the back. Okay. The next pillar of the 15-minute homestead is what you're doing right here today, and that's community. We think about self-reliance. We think about prepping, and we talk about it. And you guys already get it, right? You're not self-reliant by yourself on your homestead. Is anybody? No. No, there's always that time where you find the wild mushroom, you don't know what it is, and you need to ask somebody if that's really chicken of the woods, and they need to confirm for you because you don't know. Because what happens if you eat a mushroom that's not right? You might get sick.
The neighbors know it's not right.
The neighbors know it's not right. Here's my favorite neighbor story from my friend Louise Milliman, who has an off-grid homestead that they developed their own water system and all this stuff, and at the bottom of the hill where their driveway is, they put in a culvert, and the neighbor drove by and said, that culvert's not big enough, and she ignored them. You want to know what happened later that year? It rained. And she discovered her culvert wasn't big enough because when the rain comes there, it comes 3 inches in a day. Your neighbors your neighbors who've been there a long time know more than you do. And she always listened to that neighbor after that. Because it cost him a lot of money to put in this cement culvert that was too small. The community around us is the most important thing. A 15-minute homestead works great if you can also have the homestead blitz. And the homestead blitz, you guys know what that is, tags here. Right? You all come to the homestead and you do a project that's hard, like get the season's firewood done. Our first homestead blitz, or we call them GSD weekends, I'm not going to swear in front of you, so you can figure out what the S means, but it's about getting something done. We build a composting outhouse first. So we go to your homestead. Your first weekend, we spend the weekend building a composting outhouse, so the next weekend, you have facilities that you need to not overwhelm your septic system when we put in your garden or your aquaponics system, or do firewood, or build an outbuilding, or what. I have a friend who's been building a room addition to his house for 2 years with GSD weekends on and off, right? So that's the community piece is what really empowers you to have the freedom to leave, A, and B, to help set the infrastructure up you'll want for a 15-minute homestead. Because some other projects we've done, we run, as I said, we run sheep. And that means running electric, we rotate them. They rotate every 3 to 7 days. They're never on the same paddock within 60 days. And to do that, we run a step-in posts and electric wire. Now, you guys have a picture in your head of these flat fields with wires with soil, right? I live in Tennessee. What's my homestead like?
Rocky and hilly.
Yeah, hey baby, you want to climb my hill? That was not a joke. It's a pretty big climb to the top of that hill. And the sheep just run straight up there, but it takes some work. It's rocky, so you'll go to step in the post, and this is what happens. And then you move it somewhere else. So my fence is also never straight. It's never straight. What we figured out are the places where it's very clearly rocky and it's more like cliffy rocky. I helped Tactical do one of those once, and I'm like rock climbing to put the wire on. And I'm like, this is baloney, man. It's not what I said, but you know what I said. And he was like, yeah, we've put semi-permanent electric fencing in there. So there's little steps you can take. When you have something like that, it's going to take us half an hour just to do that one little run every time, and then we take the wire back out. No, you put in some permanent posts, you put in some aluminum wire, and you just alligator clip into that. And that means that every time you go to that place in your pasture, you no longer have to do the rock climb. You only had to do it that one time. Those little things are what make a huge difference in the homestead. Now, how do you learn all this stuff?
One thing at a time.
Tim says one thing at a time.
YouTube.
YouTube University is pretty good.
Podcast.
Here's what I know from
Festivals.
festivals. So I don't know what I'm going to learn while I'm here. Besides, there's a kid who put together this really cool phone system that reminds me of having phones. Has anybody seen that? The phones back there? I've already learned that I need to take yet another medical class from our friend Chuck over there. And he's always doing classes at my festival, which means I'm not taking it there, so I got to go travel. Somebody out there is going to say something to me today and be like, you know what, I had this really awesome idea for automating feeding systems for my chickens. Or they're going to say something about a recipe for, I don't know, making mayonnaise successfully every time. My favorite question on my podcast was, how do you fix a failed mayonnaise? And I said famously, I don't know. I've never had one fail, and the next 3 did. I was like, I'm never saying anything like that so confidently again. I don't know what I'm going to learn while I'm here, but the things I will learn while I'm here will go back to my homestead and make my life a little bit easier. So coming to the festivals like these festivals, like Self-Reliance Festival, like Kentucky Sustainable Living, like Rogue Food Conference, right? It's not so much watching Nicole Sauce speak on the stage about the 15-minute homestead. I hope I made you giggle a little bit, like maybe it's partially about that, but it's more about everybody who's sitting next to you right now and the people you aren't sitting next to that you haven't spoken to. I really think that homesteading is, with its resurgence now, we've seen a lot of people end up in the homestead overwhelm or the homestead rescue phase, because the first mistake we make as homesteaders is we put in sheep, we put in ducks, we put in chickens, we put in rabbits, and we put in goats. And you find out that the goats get out and get on your roof. And that's like Santa Claus coming every day, right? Makes you super happy. Now, if you're giggling, it has actually happened that goats have been on my roof. That was the first thing. I had learned more about fencing from goats than any other animal. If you do that all in 1 year and you've never raised livestock before, you're in for a pretty hard year. When we have community, we have people telling us, hey, so I don't know how to say this to you. I hear you talking about getting sheep, ducks, chickens, goats, rabbits. How about you just choose one this year and we'll help you get that done? And do you know the biggest objection I hear to that is? Can you guess what it is? I don't have time. Why? Okay, S is HTF. I've got to get it all done this year. Do you? No, why don't you? Who here has chickens? Who here has chickens they could sell? Look around, guys. Okay, who here has cows? Who here has cows they can sell? Ooh, ooh, ooh. Who here has sheep? Who has sheep they can sell?
Frozen.
Frozen. They're already frozen. You don't even have to put them in freezer camp. Yes, if you're looking at society right now and you're worried it might collapse, I'm going to ask you two things. One, has S already HTF? Has it already happened? Were you there with me in 2020 when the food systems like completely failed to deliver food to the grocery stores for a while? Maybe it's already happened. Maybe we're in it right now. It doesn't always, I mean, I know we're all supposed to be eating brains after October 4th. I get it. Maybe it doesn't happen all at once. Maybe the instability has been going on for a little while and it's been coming to a head. So then do you really need to be able to be completely sufficient in a year? Your first year on the homestead? Or do we need to find ways to work with each other? Do we need to say, you know what I'm good at? I am good at sourcing things in bulk and repackaging and passing on the savings to my community. Because I know somebody who does that, Discount Mylar Bags. He was in a prepper group, and he's like, that guy knows how to hunt, that guy knows how to butcher, that guy knows how to raise vegetables, and I got nothing. I'm gonna die if SHTF. All I know how to do is source stuff cheap. Wow, Mylar bags are really expensive when you just buy a few. I bet I could, and he started a whole company that's turned out to be his retirement. Every one of us has that thing right now. So the best thing I think I can leave you with, especially if you're going to be starting to do homesteading, or if you live somewhere where you're like, I don't want to be a homesteader, but I want more food stability. Choose your one thing this year. Whether it be quail in the city. Quail and rabbits are quiet animals that don't smell bad if they're taken care of properly. They're fairly easy to raise. I'm just going to throw that out there. Or if it's put in some raised beds in your backyard. To if you've gotten your first homestead and you want to start everything right now, start something. Otherwise, you're going to end up in the overwhelm that most of us have ended up in at one time. So if you end up there, don't feel bad. You're in good company. But if you do one thing a year, you will grow faster than if you do everything your first year. That seems counterintuitive, but how many of you have taken tactical training at the range? Not very many. Wow. How come you haven't taken any training, guys? Who trains here in this group? You guys run trainings? Okay. I'm not a gun person, but I decided that because things were getting a little weird, I should be better with my gun. And so I took tactical training, and I will continue to do it. And the biggest lesson I got out of my first class, and I will tell you, I was in a class with 20 people, and every time we did a shooting drill, they were finishing the drill and I was taking my first shot. And the reason that is I realized if I go very slow and precise, I will develop the muscle memory and I will actually hit the target. And if I go fast, I'm more likely to point the gun at something I don't want to shoot, which is bad. And usually my bullets would go low because I would anticipate the kick and I would aim down and that happens, right? It's the same in homesteading. If you go slow, you gain the chops. You figure out the timing, you figure out the tools you need, and you figure out how to make your day a series of 5-minute things rather than 72-hour things that couldn't possibly fit in a day. And you get good at it. And it becomes almost habit. Like at this point, after 16 years, there are things I do that people are like, how do you get all that done? And I'm like, I don't know. Just like when I walk by it, I flick my wrist and the thing happens, you know. Other people have to think about that wrist flick or the filling of the water or whatever it is. If you go slow, you're going to go fast because you'll be more precise. You'll have fewer mistakes. I guess with that, I'm just going to have to say, get shit done. I got the bark of approval. Do you guys have any questions about homesteading or anything of that nature?
Where can we find more information?
Well,
That was a planted question.
yeah. First of all, if you're free next weekend, we're doing a really cool festival called Self-Reliance Festival. And I'd love for all of you to come down and check it out. We've got Joel Salatin coming down. We've got Jack Spirko from the Survival Podcast. If you haven't met John Willis from Special Operations Equipment, you want to. But of course, you can hang out with Spags. You can hang out with Tim. You can hang out with me. You can hang out with Tag. Patrick isn't coming, right? Not this time. We're all going to be there, and we're, you know, the conversations that happen around sort of, I call it around the campfire, it'll probably be around the stage at night, have been life-changing for me personally, and I've seen it change so many people's lives. So check that out. But it's going to be in Camden, Tennessee. So how far is it from here? 8.5 hour drive from here. It's just a day. On-site camping is tent camping. If you come down with a camper, we have some places we can tell you to go, or there are some like great campgrounds with heated showers and stuff there. So that one. But if you want to find out more about me or just follow what we're doing, I have a podcast called Living Free in Tennessee where I just share my own experiences, and it's a combination of running a business. Like I ship and roast coffee, and just the story of how that has grown, my homestead, and the building community that we do. It's really just a way to keep myself accountable, but a whole bunch of people have come along behind me, which keeps me even more accountable now. And it can be entertaining at times. We get Toolman Tim on there sometimes. That's at livingfreeintennessee.com. You can check it out there. Yeah. Selfreliancefestival.com. Yeah. What?
My sister from Wyoming will come out. About 3 of my cousins and a few more children. They'll get together and plan to be in can 500.
Yeah, so he just said his family would get together and can 500 jars of tomatoes. That's called a canning blitz. We do canning blitzes at my house when there's too much stuff. So I used to bring in like hatch green chilies, roast them, can them, and then everybody went home with salsa and whatnot. We had one lady who did 400 pounds of, her only job was taking the skins off tomatoes and then passing it down the line. She did 400 pounds by herself. Just the skin, and everybody knows, like the skinning part where you boil it, oh, not fun. It's way easier if you freeze them, but yeah. Any other questions? I think we're good. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. I'll see you at your show soon. All right, up next, right around 3 o'clock, Tag from Life Done Free is going to be leading the Freedom Panel. So you have about 30-ish minutes to stretch, do what you got to do, and we'll be right back up here in about 30 minutes, close to 3 o'clock.